It happened on a Tuesday. The kind of Tuesday that smells like rain and fresh coffee. I was at the sink, rinsing the last of the breakfast dishes, when Delaney glided in, placed a mug next to me, and said, "You should start packing." Her voice was so calm, so practiced, it was as if she were commenting on the weather. "This house is perfect for the baby." I froze, my hands still slick with water, the droplets hitting the tile floor with a quiet splash. She was rubbing her belly, not her own, but Rowan's, Alan's, as if she already owned the place, my place. Before I could even form a single syllable, my son, Rowan, walked in. He was all casual, all warmth, like it was a Sunday brunch with friends. He leaned against the counter, right beside her, and said, "The guest room's too small for a crib." He didn't look at me. "Mom, Delaney needs the master. She'll be nursing." My son, the boy I once held with one arm while folding laundry with the other, a tiny, trusting weight in my grasp. The same boy who, when he was just 6, spent a whole summer building a fortress out of cardboard boxes in the living room, convinced he was a king. And now he was standing here, calmly dethroning me. "You've always said this house is too much for one person," Delaney added, her tone as sweet as syrup. She said it like a kindness, a gift, as if she were doing me a favor. "It'll be better for everyone if you find a quieter place. We even toured a few rentals for you. Something manageable." Manageable. She said the word like it was a new and exciting discovery, a kindness she was bestowing upon me, as if she hadn't just announced her plan to dismantle my entire life. I dried my hands slowly. I took my time, methodically folding the dish towel and setting it on the counter with the same calm precision I saw in her. My voice remained even, steady. "And where exactly do you plan to put me?" Rowan shrugged, not looking at me. "There's a unit on Grayfield, 1 bedroom, close to the bus line." The bus line. The same bus line I'd spent 20 years on, commuting back and forth to a job I didn't love, all so I could afford to raise him in a real home. A house with a yard and a porch and a place to grow. A house that wasn't a 1-bedroom apartment on a busy bus route? I didn't answer them, not fully. I just nodded and walked out to the porch, my body feeling like it needed air. They thought I would go quietly. They thought I was some frail, elderly woman they could simply package up and send away. They didn't know what I already knew. The closed laptop they hadn't bothered to clear. The conversation I had overheard last week when they thought I was in the garden, a quiet, forgotten figure tending to her plants. They didn't know I'd already seen the lease agreement with my name on it, half-drafted on Rowan's desktop, a tidy little file waiting to be printed. They didn't know about the copies I'd already made of my own important documents, or the call I'd made the day before to a friend who owed me a favor. Her name was Helen, a retired real estate lawyer. She knew a thing or two about property rights and family disputes. We'd had a long talk, and she'd given me advice that was both simple and powerful. Knowledge is power, and documentation is evidence. No, I wasn't going to argue. Not yet. I would let them believe they'd won. Let them measure curtains and discuss baby names in my house. I wasn't going anywhere except to get ready. The quiet was my greatest strength, my secret weapon. They had assumed I was a passive bystander, a prop in their grand play. But they were wrong. My silence wasn't surrender. It was strategy. 9 years ago, I stood alone on this porch. The air was heavy with the smell of damp earth and the quiet emptiness of a house waiting to be loved. Barrett's funeral had just ended, and the house, which was still mostly a shell of what it could be, was quiet, half-rotted, and ours. He had found the listing on a whim, a little classified ad in a local paper. "It's got bones," he'd said, walking the creaking floors like he already belonged. "We can make it ours." We had signed the deed just 6 months before he was gone. He never got to finish it, to see the dream we had shared come to life. But I stayed. The walls were warped, the paint peeled in long, sad strips, like a tired sigh. The porch sagged under its own weight. It wasn't much, not then, but I saw what it could be, and I made a promise. Not just to myself, but to him. I stood there, looking at the peeling rafters, and whispered, "I'll bring it back to life. Barrett, just wait and see." Rowan was already living with Delaney by then, building his own life, his own future, a path that didn't include a mother with a half-rotted house. I didn't ask them to help. Didn't want to. I needed this house to be mine. Not a favor returned or a burden shared, but something I built, something I earned, a tangible piece of my grief and my hope. So, I learned. From library books with titles like Home Repair for Dummies and The Complete Guide to Renovation, and from videos online, I would watch and rewind and watch again, soaking up every bit of information, and then I did it. I hauled out old linoleum and laid each tile by hand, pressing them into place one by one, a meditative, repetitive act that turned my knuckles white. I cut insulation until my fingers bled, the fiberglass scratching at my skin, leaving behind tiny, invisible wounds. The fireplace took me 3 weeks, chipping away at old mortar, resetting every single stone, one blister at a time. Each stone a memory, a moment of grief and resolve. The crown molding took 4 months. I stained it in the garage, one brushstroke at a time, while the heater blew dust at my ankles, the smell of wood and varnish filling the air. I grew into the house as it grew back around me. The kitchen where I learned to level cabinets, the same one Delaney now wants to repaint in muted beige. The master bedroom, a room I sanded, swept, and painted while crying into a cup of cold coffee. That's the one they now call better for the baby. They didn't see the weight in the walls. They didn't see the sweat in the tears, the labor in the floors. They just saw square footage. They saw a blank slate, an empty canvas waiting for their lives, their furniture, their future. The concept of sweat equity, the value added to a property by the owner's own work, was completely lost on them. It's an intangible asset that can be hard to quantify, but it's real. It's the difference between a house and a home. The median value of sweat equity in home renovations is significant. A 2023 study by the National Association of Realtors found that the average value of a major renovation project, like a kitchen or bathroom remodel, can increase a home's value by as much as 60 to 70% of the project's cost. But for me, it wasn't about money. I hadn't just inherited a home, I had rebuilt a promise. And now Delaney wanted to plant her nursery here, as if that room were empty, as if my name wasn't soaked into the beams like sweat. I walked through the house again that night, touching every surface like memory. No, they couldn't just take it, but I needed more than rage. I needed a plan. It began like a slow leak, so quiet I almost missed it. One morning, I reached for my coffee mug, the one from my first solo trip after Barrett passed. It had a turquoise rim and a sun-faded logo of a tiny diner outside Santa Fe. I'd used it every morning for years. It was gone. In its place sat a shiny, pink mug with a cartoon elephant smiling up at me, glitter embedded in the ceramic like a joke. I didn't ask. I just moved it to the back of the cabinet, behind a stack of plates, and made my coffee in a chipped white one I barely liked. That afternoon, I came home from the store and stopped short in the doorway. The living room had been rearranged. My reading chair, Barrett's chair, was no longer angled by the window where the morning light hit just right. It was shoved against the far wall, half blocking the bookshelf. Delaney appeared behind me, holding a swatch of pale yellow fabric. "Better flow," she chirped, brushing past me. "The sunlight's too much on that side. Bad for baby skin." I stood still while she measured the curtains. Rowan didn't even look up from his phone. The next day, I reached for crackers in the pantry and found only almond flour cookies, dried fruit, and jars labeled with organic brands I didn't recognize. My shelf, my little corner with peanut butter pretzels and saltines, was empty. "Cleared the junk out," Delaney said breezily when she saw me standing there. "We're making space for..." "For what?" I wanted to ask, but I didn't. I just closed the door. Then came the baby books, stacked across the dining table like bricks in a tiny pink fortress. Pages on sleep schedules and organic formula, swaddling techniques, and nursery feng shui. I heard her voice float down the hallway to Rowan. "It's honestly silly to have an entire house just for one person. Doesn't make sense." They thought I was just a body taking up space, something outdated, disposable. They thought I didn't notice their gradual campaign of erasure. But I was still here. I had started keeping notes. Not just memories, but facts. Dates. comments, patterns. If they were building a case to push me out, I would build a record to stand on. Because the house wasn't the only thing they were trying to erase. They were trying to erase me. The subtle changes they were making are part of a psychological pattern of control, a form of coercive control, which is a type of emotional abuse. It's not about big, dramatic fights. It's about a slow, methodical chipping away at a person's sense of self and their belonging. A study by the National Domestic Violence Hotline found that victims of this type of abuse often feel isolated and powerless because the abuse is so subtle and difficult to explain to others. Delaney's actions were a masterclass in this, a quiet campaign to make me feel like an interloper in my own home. They were using my age, my single status, and their assumed future as a weapon against me. But they had miscalculated. They saw my silence as surrender. They saw my passivity as weakness. What they failed to realize was that I was gathering intelligence. I was collecting ammunition. Every displaced chair, every missing mug, every offhand comment, it was all going into a notebook, a ledger of their small betrayals. I knew that in any legal or even social battle, the one with the most information and the most detailed record wins. They were playing a game of emotional warfare, and I was playing a game of cold, hard facts. And facts, unlike feelings, can be presented as evidence. The guest room shares a wall with my office. I'd been sorting some old papers, tax documents from years ago, old utility bills when I heard them. The voices were muffled at first, a low hum I almost ignored. But as I turned off the desk lamp and simply listened, they became clearer. Delaney's voice, tight and low, resonated through the wall. Once we refinance under both names, she can't just take it back. It'll be ours legally. Her tone was sharp, a final definitive statement. Then Rowan's voice, quieter, a conspiratorial whisper. She's old. She'll cave. Just don't push her too hard, too fast. I didn't move. I didn't make a sound. I simply sat still, my hands resting on the folder in front of me, the old papers suddenly feeling like a roadmap to my future. My heart didn't race. It slowed, a calm, deliberate beat. I'd already begun consulting with a legal clinic 2 weeks earlier, a free service run by retired lawyers who volunteered their time. Quiet people, smart people, people who understood when a woman didn't want a courtroom fight, just protection. I had outlined the situation for them, the slow invasion, the verbal assaults, the quiet attempts at erasure. They'd listened patiently, nodding as I spoke, and had given me a clear and concise strategy. Document everything, and secure your legal standing. I waited until their footsteps creaked down the hallway, their door closing with a soft thud. The house was silent again. I walked to the cabinet in the hallway where I'd kept the deed since the day Barrett and I bought the place. The lock clicked open with a familiar sound, like muscle memory. Inside was the original paperwork, notarized and dated. The paper yellowed with age but still crisp at the corners. My name, no co-owners, no co-signers. I pulled it out and laid it flat on the kitchen table, reading every line slowly, like scripture. I read it once, and then I read it again. The legal jargon, the formal language, it was all a foreign language to them. But to me, it was a lifeline. It was a promise. Then I made a copy, a perfect duplicate of the most important document I owned. After that, I placed the original deed in a manila envelope and took it upstairs, where I tucked it inside the lining of my old suitcase, the one I hadn't used since Barrett passed. It was a sturdy, forgotten piece of luggage, sitting in the back of my closet, gathering dust. No one would ever think to look there. The copy I left in my office drawer, easy to find, on purpose. Let them think I was careless, that I didn't notice the whispers, the changes, the inch-by-inch invasion. They'd mistake my silence for surrender, and that was fine with me, because now I didn't just have suspicions. I had evidence, and tomorrow I'd take the next step. Not loud, not public, but deliberate. I was done waiting for the storm to pass. I was becoming it. Delaney made pancakes that morning as if she were hosting brunch, not serving notice. The smell of butter and sugar filled the kitchen, a warm and cloying scent that felt like a mockery. She moved with confidence, flipping the last round onto a plate as if she hadn't just spent the past week slowly gutting the life I built here. She poured syrup with the practiced ease of someone who was executing a script. Then she said it. "We found a studio apartment for you close to the transit line. Not too many stairs, just until you get settled." I didn't touch my fork. The words hung in the air, a final, damning declaration. Rowan stood by the fridge, arms crossed, eyes down. "We paid the deposit already. It's done, Mom." Done. Like I was a project completed. A chapter closed. A problem solved. I folded my napkin carefully. The small action, a stark contrast to the earthquake happening inside me. "Did either of you ever think to ask if I was leaving?" Delaney glanced at Rowan, then back at me. Her voice softened, a pitying tone. "It's for the baby. He needs space, stability." She rested a hand on her belly like a shield, like justification, a tool of emotional manipulation used by her to get what she wanted. I looked at it, then at her. The moment stretched. I stood without a word, walked down the hall, and returned with a plain white envelope. No names on the outside, just weight. I placed it on the table between the butter dish and the betrayal. "Read this," I said. Delaney hesitated. Rowan, with a pale, anxious face, opened it. The first page was a copy of the deed. My name, my property, sole ownership. The second page was a ledger. 6 months of utilities, groceries, household expenses, all itemized, dated, and totaled. The third, a 30-day notice addressed to both of them, prepared by the same legal clinic they didn't know I'd been visiting. Rowan's face turned white. Delaney's mouth twitched, a tiny, nervous spasm. "You're evicting us?" I took a slow sip of my coffee. "I'm enforcing my rights. You've been living here rent-free. Consider this the formal correction." Neither of them spoke. The silence was deafening, the reality of the situation sinking in. I stood, adjusted my sweater, and carried my cup to the sink. "The baby kicked," they said. Well, so did I. And I kicked back, harder. The rest of the day, they stayed in their room, doors shut. I began making a list of everything they owed me, just in case it needed to go further. I calculated the fair market value of rent in our area, a task I had already started. According to a 2024 report by the U.S. Census Bureau and Zillow, the median rent for a 3-bedroom home in our region was roughly $2,500. This meant my 6-month ledger was just the tip of the iceberg. I was prepared for them to try to fight me on the amount, but I had all the data to back it up. The sun hadn't even reached the back deck when Rowan came to the kitchen again, clutching the envelope like it might bite him. He placed it on the counter, staring at the bold letters across the top of the deed. Zeralda Maven. Embossed, notarized, undisputed. No co-owner, no lien, no refinancing, just me. Delaney stormed in moments later, her hair tied up, wearing that strange fixed smile she used when she wanted something. "This is just a technicality," she said. "It doesn't have to be like this. You're being cruel. I'm pregnant." I didn't blink. I reached back into the envelope and slid out 2 more folded papers. 30-day notices, I said, setting them beside the deed. "Effective today." Delaney stepped back as if she'd been slapped. "You can't be serious." Rowan tried to speak, but I cut him off. "You've lived here for 6 months. I've calculated market rent, utilities, groceries, laundry supplies, and cleaning products. That brings your balance to just over $13,000. Due upon exit." Delaney's mouth opened, then closed again. No sound came out. I continued. "You have until the end of next month to vacate. I've already contacted a notary to formalize the record. I expect no damage to the property, and I will be photographing the rooms today for documentation." Rowan finally found his voice. "You'd really do this to us?" "I didn't do anything," I said. "You made choices. I'm simply responding to them." Delaney's eyes narrowed. "You waited for this. You planned it." "I did," I said, "because I had to." There was a long silence between us, long enough to feel like the truth was settling into the cracks of the floor. Rowan looked at the papers like they were foreign, like he hadn't imagined this could ever touch them. Then Delaney whispered, "We'll fight this." I nodded. "You're free to try, but I'd suggest reading the law first." They left the kitchen. I stayed and poured myself another cup of coffee. The bitter kind. No sugar. Then I opened the drawer beside me, pulled out my notebook, and began writing the next steps. Page 1. Titled, Final Inventory Before Transition. The silence was their first weapon. Delaney stopped acknowledging me entirely. Doors slammed, cabinets banged. Her heavy footsteps made sure I knew she was still queen of some imagined castle. Rowan, on the other hand, left notes. Folded scraps of paper tucked under my mug, taped to the fridge, slid beneath my door. Can we talk? Please don't do this. Think of the baby. But it wasn't guilt. It was fear. He knew, intuitively, that the foundation of their plan was crumbling beneath them. A week before the deadline, I was slicing apples in the kitchen when Rowan appeared behind me, hands stuffed in his hoodie pockets. She tricked me, he said, his voice low, barely a whisper. She told me it was my baby. I didn't look up right away. I finished the slice, set the knife down, and then I turned. Is it? He didn't answer. His eyes dropped to the counter. He leaned against it like gravity had changed, like his entire world was tilting on its axis. I walked past him and picked up the manila envelope waiting on the hall table, the one with the eviction filing and all the documentation. I held it out to him. This is the eviction filing, I said. The sheriff will enforce it in 7 days. He didn't take it. So I set it on the counter next to him. I didn't know, he mumbled. I nodded. You didn't ask. He blinked. But I didn't stay to see if tears followed. I turned on the coffee maker and walked away. Let the silence answer for me. That night, I heard them arguing upstairs. Delaney's voice, sharp, frantic. Rowan's barely a whisper. Something fell. A drawer, maybe. Then, quiet again. It started with the sound of glass. One moment, the house was still. The next, something shattered. Sharp, violent, final. I didn't move. I didn't leave my room. I heard Rowan yelling. Delaney's voice high-pitched, wild. Doors opening. Then silence. The kind that sinks into the walls. I stayed where I was, a cup of coffee cooling in my hand, the quiet pressing in like a thick fog. The next morning, Clara, my friend who had given me that first bit of advice, knocked. She didn't bother waiting for me to answer. She came in like she always had, head down, mission clear. You have to see this, she said, holding out her phone. It was a post on a forum I'd never heard of. An anonymous username, but the words were clearly Rowan's. My girlfriend lied about a pregnancy to trap me. Said the baby was mine. I found out too late. The story unfolded in short, jagged paragraphs. The timeline matched. So did the city. So did the details. How she'd moved into his mother's house, insisted on the master bedroom, and tried to get her name on the mortgage. And then the last line. 0% probability, confirmed by paternity test. She cheated with her ex. I sat down at the table, letting the words hit me like a wave. Not pain, not shock, but a deep, profound relief. Clara stared at me. You okay? I nodded. Then I laughed. Really laughed. The kind of laugh that comes up from your ribs, messy and raw, and a little bit hysterical. Weeks of pressure cracked all at once. The nursery plans, the pink mug, the slow erasure of my presence, my history, my home, all of it built on a lie. A house of cards flipped by a single truth. She'd tried to trap him. She'd tried to oust me. And now, the baby wasn't his. The leverage had vanished. The next morning, Rowan knocked on my bedroom door. His voice was quiet. Can we talk? I opened the door, but said nothing. I just walked past him to start the coffee. He followed. She didn't slam a door, didn't cry, didn't scream. She just walked out. 2 wheeled suitcases, a carry-on bag, and a purse slung over her shoulder like nothing had happened. Her hair was done, her makeup perfect. A sleek black car pulled into the driveway, idling like it knew better than to wait. Her ex stepped out. Designer sunglasses. A quiet nod. Delaney didn't glance back. She slid into the passenger seat, shut the door, and that was it. Gone. Rowan stood at the front door for a long time after they drove off. He didn't speak, just stared down the street like he was waiting for something to come back that never would. Then quietly, he packed, too. One duffel bag, no fanfare, no confrontation. He left a note on the hallway table. I didn't open it. I just watched him from the porch as he pulled out of the driveway. Eyes heavy, shoulders slumped. My son. The same boy who once danced on this deck with popsicle juice on his chin. Now just a man who'd been fooled and let it happen. When the house was finally still, I walked back inside and pulled my chair, Barrett's chair, to the window again. The one Delaney had shoved against the wall to open the space. I set it right where it belonged, where the morning light always landed. I poured myself a proper cup of coffee and sat down, letting the quiet settle, not as absence, but as a return. This was my house again, not just in name, but in presence. The air felt cleaner. The walls no longer listening to schemes. The corners no longer crowded by baby books and glitter mugs and fake promises. Then I opened the guest room door. Clean sheets, empty hangers, no scent of perfume or spite. But not for long, because that room wasn't meant to be claimed by force or lies. It had been built with intention, mine, and I knew exactly who deserved it next. I walked to my office, opened the bottom drawer, and took out a letter I'd been saving. The address was written months ago, and today it was finally time to send it. I didn't want revenge. I wanted restoration. After the house was quiet again, truly quiet, I opened the guest room windows and let the light pour in. I stripped the bed, aired the mattress, and painted the walls a soft sage green. The kind of green that doesn't demand attention but welcomes it. I bought new sheets, clean, warm, simple. I added a small desk and a sturdy bookshelf, a lamp with a soft yellow glow. Then I picked up the phone and called the local women's shelter. "I have a spare room," I said. "It's quiet, private, and safe." The woman on the other end paused, then asked, "Would you be open to short-term placement for transitional residents? Just a few weeks at a time?" I said. "Yes, that was 3 months ago. Now, once every season, a woman arrives with whatever she has, sometimes just a suitcase, sometimes only silence. I give them 2 months, rent-free, no questions about the past, just a soft landing, a chance to exhale." Last week, Poppy arrived. She was in her 52nd like me, wore a raincoat too big for her shoulders, and carried one cardboard box, taped shut with care. Her eyes were tired but not broken. There was something in them that looked like fire trying to find air. I opened the door for her and said, "Welcome." She stepped inside, looked around the room, then at me. I handed her the key. "You're safe now." She didn't cry. She just nodded and set the box down gently on the floor. I left her alone after that. Some people need conversation. Some need space. What they all need is dignity. This house, once filled with whispered betrayals and thinly veiled grabs for power, has changed. It's no longer a battleground. It's a sanctuary. And me? I am still here. Not as a woman who was erased, but one who rewrote her own story. And now, when the light hits the reading chair just right, I sit with my coffee, never tea, and let the peace settle in deep. Because this space is mine, and I've filled it with something stronger than bitterness.